I, for the longest time, despised Tom Holland Spider-Man, as he felt like a stark departure, pun intended, from the Spider-Man I grew up with. And it's weird because I genuinely found his debut in Civil War mesmerizing. It felt like one of the most memorable Spider-Man appearances you'll ever see on the big screen. You know, he was funny,
Hey buddy, I think you lost this.
and most importantly, Tom Holland looked and felt like Spider-Man. But after that debut, I lost all interest in his character, his respective movies, and the character stopped feeling like the Spider-Man I knew and loved until the end of No Way Home. So before we get on to why No Way Home's ending made me love Tom Holland's Spider-Man for the first time since Civil War, we have to go back a bit and understand why his version of the web crawler felt the least like Spider-Man out of a long list of iterations we've had over the years. Remember when the character of Peter Parker used to be broke? And I know you do, because the Raimi trilogy's sole mission was to make sure you knew how badly Peter was struggling.
Rent?
Do you remember when he had to make his own suits, had to scrape ends meet just to survive, had no other superpowered allies to bail him out of trouble, or even better, when Aunt May used to be an inspiration to him to keep grinding no matter how hard things got?
These past few years, you helping me through college and working here, sacrificing so much and asking for nothing. I just wish there were more people like you in the world.
Well, none of this matters from most of the MCU trilogy. Peter is essentially rich as he has access to billions of dollars worth of assets at his disposal that he could sell in an instant if he wanted to. I mean, I'm telling you, if Tobey Spider-Man ever had access to this tech, with the way he used to struggle financially, he'd have all sorts of people running around New York with Iron Man suits. But then again, would that be the case? Because Tobey had such a strong sense of responsibility, I could actually see him literally battling with this dilemma and opting not to sell any of the Stark tech for his own benefit. And on the topic of responsibility, remember when Peter said this to Tony?
Look, when you can do the things that I can, but you don't, and then the bad things happen, they happen because of you.
TLDR.
With great power comes great responsibility.
When Peter said this to Tony in the MCU, well, it made me wonder whether he only said it to get into the Avengers, or if he said it because it's what Uncle Ben programmed him to say. Because 8 months later, canonically, he hands over a pair of glasses that grants the user complete power over global communication and defense networks, mind you, to a bloke he just met because he couldn't handle the responsibility that Tony had bestowed upon him.
Because maybe he didn't trust me to have Edith, he just trusted me to pick who should.
Nothing about this scene screamed Peter grappling with responsibility, as he so claimed.
Because I have too much of a responsibility.
It reeked of the writers throwing an unnecessary plot device in to check the responsibility tick box, and that's why I can never really take this idea of responsibility seriously in the MCU, as in the multiverse that we all know well and truly exists now, we have a Spider-Man dealing with whether to save their aunt or the entire city. Tobey's Spider-Man literally quits in Spider-Man 2 because he's failing college, losing MJ, all whilst being publicly accused of coercing with the same villain he's trying to stop. And I mean, Andrew's Spider-Man also quits as he holds himself responsible for the death of Gwen Stacy. All things that made Tom's responsibilities look like child's play. Another reason I couldn't get behind MCU Spider-Man until the end of No Way Home was because of the Avengers problem. I'm all for Spider-Man appearing in the Avengers. It offers a unique and funny dynamic we don't often get.
Mr. Stark, it smells like a new car in here.
Oh, come on!
But it becomes a problem when it messes with the stakes of his own stories. For starters, Tom's Spider-Man suits are littered with technology provided by Iron Man. For Tobey and Andrew, the suits were just costumes they created themselves, not armor. And damage to the suits meant increased vulnerability against villains, and damages they also had to fix. I mean, the soles of Andrew's TASM 1 suit are the same soles from the shoes he wears in the films. I like to think the suits didn't make Tobey and Andrew Spider-Man, but merely represented them. Contrarily, in Homecoming, Far From Home, and even parts of No Way Home, as cool as the action scenes in those films were, the respective suits often felt like they were doing the work for him. Most of the time, the suits weren't even made by Peter, and when they were, it never felt akin to how Spider-Man would create a suit. I mean, could someone please explain to me why an Avengers soundtrack was playing when Spider-Man in his own movie was creating his own supposed suit? I wanted to make a comparison of Insomniac Spider-Man because at the end of that game, Peter pivots from the advanced suit to a tech suit. You know, the iconic anti-ox suit that could have been the best black suit had Spider-Man not worn these two. But anyway, it's an example of a tech suit done right because it doesn't give him access to abilities you wouldn't associate with the character, but it merely helps with his durability against Dr. Octavius. stays true to the genius of the character, whilst acknowledging that sometimes Peter needs slightly more than the norm to take down some of his greatest foes. And on the note of the Avengers, having Spider-Man be so closely connected to them meant that stakes were more often than not non-existent for us as the viewers, because when something even remotely dangerous was about to go down, you were always waiting for Iron Man to show up, which happened multiple times. And when it wasn't Tony, it was Doctor Strange. And well, when it wasn't Doctor Strange, it was the other two Spider-Men. Yes, I acknowledge Andrew and Tobey are not Avengers.
The Avengers? Hey, what is that?
But my point still stands. Whereas when you look at the other three I've mentioned in this video thus far, stakes were consistently at all-time highs in their respective universes. The absence of support from other superheroes meant that Tobey had to stop that train himself or else everyone dies. Andrew had no support from any other heroes in his battles against Lizard and Green Goblin, which resulted in him losing two people so close to him. And Insomniac Spider-Man had to go solo against the whole Sinister Six, which could have ended the entire game prematurely had Dr. Octavius not spared him. So what I'm trying to get at is, had those other Spider-Men had other heroes to constantly back them up, those iconic moments become way less impactful and the jeopardy disappears. It felt like throughout Tom's movies they tried to make him different from what we got before, which is totally fine, but it came at the expense of the character we loved. The inclusion into the Avengers meant there was a safety net that eroded jeopardy. The close ties with Tony Stark meant that despite not being literally rich, financial issues were never an issue that worried Peter and Aunt May. And the lack of on-screen tragedy as a result of Peter's actions meant that the responsibility quote we discussed earlier felt misaligned and misplaced in the movies. This is why the ending of No Way Home saved Tom Holland's Spider-Man, and in my opinion contains the best scenes in this trilogy and arguably some of the best scenes of any Spider-Man movie. Hear me out. I'm first going to acknowledge that the MCU didn't intend for Tom's trilogy to be a backstory. It only came as a result of years of criticism from fans, and thus they finally decided to implement the necessary changes, which meant MCU Spider-Man could finally stand on his own 2 feet. So let's talk about this ending I keep going on about. After years of having it easy compared to other iterations of the character, it felt like Tom's Spider-Man finally learnt what responsibility meant. Aunt May? Gone. Girlfriend and best friend? Gone. Technology? Gone. Oh yeah, and identity? Gone. I'm of the opinion that in the space of one movie, MCU Spider-Man went from being the Spider-Man who went through the least amount of hardship to the Spider-Man who's gone through the most. From the coffee shop scene to the final swing, it's the most emotional I've felt watching any Spider-Man movie. Yes, more than Gwen's death, and yes, more than Sandman beating the shit out of Tobey. Oh yeah, did anyone else cry about that as a kid too, by the way? Nope, just me? I mean, well, you can't blame me. These reporters had 8-year-old me convinced that my goat was about to die.
It could be the end of Spider-Man.
Anyways, I digress. For the first time, I wholeheartedly felt an intense sadness for MCU Peter. The coffee shop scene in which Peter sees MJ and Ned for the first time after the memory wipe honestly breaks me, as right at the start of the movie we see these three in unison, united and strong as ever as they navigate how they're going to enroll into college after Peter's identity crisis. And now by the end of the film, seeing Peter now stand outside by himself watching on was so reminiscent of a real life scenario where you realise the life you once shared with people has moved on without you. That moment when Ned walks past him without zero acknowledgement after having witnessed years of their friendship is genuinely hard to stomach, as one thing the trilogy did right was sell that sense of brotherhood between the two. And then you have the interaction between Peter and MJ, which feels so real and eerily relatable, yet also something straight out of a nightmare. I think Tom's acting in this scene is why I think he's the best actor to play the role of Spider-Man. The genuine on-command awkwardness, the nervousness, and the uncertainty in his expressions and movement really help magnify the scale of the situation he's experiencing.
Right.
I, from a personal standpoint, found Peter to be the most relatable he'd ever been. He went back to what was familiar to him with the goal of rekindling relationships, which is something we all do undeniably. But when he sees MJ's plastered forehead, he hesitates as he realizes she's better off without him. That's the sort of responsibility I was desperately looking for from the character. I know I could potentially end the video there, but we have to talk about the apartment/final swing scene because it's the icing on the cake for the character's redemption. Now when I saw Tom enter his apartment, my brain instantly scrambled back to... Now I'm not saying a prerequisite for a good Spider-Man is you have to be similar to Tobey in every way, but I am saying that seeing Tom's Spider-Man finally have relatable responsibilities that make the character special felt like a massive step in the right direction.
Rent is due on the 1st of the month.
Don't be late.
And then we get that final swing. I might get cooked, but when I put nostalgia aside, it is the best final swing scene in a Spider-Man movie. Objectively, it's not the best in terms of cinematography, but seeing Tom finally make his own suit, the Spider-Man way, coupled with him staring out the window alone in the Christmas period where it's all about family and togetherness, and yet he goes out to do the right thing, which is protect people, makes the following scene all the more better. I also really have to credit the music in this scene. The orchestral theme by Michael Giacchino starts off incredibly mellow and sad as you realise the predicament Peter is in, but gets progressively more hopeful and cheerful when you realise Spider-Man is about hope and overcoming adversity.